My daughter looked up at my boss standing on our porch with a lunch bag in her hands and asked, "Why do you keep bringing my dad food?" Claire Thomas froze. I froze too, one hand still on the doorframe, my work shirt wrinkled from a 14-hour shift and my tie hanging loose around my neck. The late afternoon sun was low behind the maple trees in our suburban street, turning the porch rail gold and showing every chip in the white paint I kept promising Lily I would fix. Inside the house, her backpack lay open on the hallway rug, a permission slip half folded beside one sneaker. Behind Claire, the black company sedan idled near the curb, its brake lights red against the quiet street. Claire held a brown paper bag from the diner 3 blocks away. Two sealed lunch containers sat inside, still warm enough that steam softened the top of the bag. She looked down at Lily, then at me. And for 1 second, the regional director of operations, the woman who could silence a ballroom full of hotel managers with one raised eyebrow, had no answer ready. Lily tilted her head. "She brought food yesterday too," she said. "And last week at the hotel. Do you forget lunch a lot, Dad?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because Lily was 7, and 7-year-olds could walk straight through doors adults spent years locking, Claire lowered the bag slightly. "Because your dad remembers everyone's dinner except his own," she said at last. "And someone should make sure he eats before the coffee turns into a food group." Lily looked at me. I looked at the travel mug still in my hand, the same coffee I had poured at 6 that morning and never finished. Neither of us laughed. The answer was gentle, but it landed harder than any accusation. Claire's voice softened. "Hi, Lily." "Hi, Miss Thomas." Lily's eyes moved to the bag. "Is there fries?" "There are fries." Lily's face brightened. That should have made the moment simple. It did not. Because Claire was my boss. Because she did not normally come to my house. Because Elias Vance, the corporate VP who wanted me transferred to Chicago, or gone entirely, had spent the last month turning every operational problem at the flagship hotel into evidence against me. And because Claire had been the only person in the company who noticed that I was holding the whole place together with server logs, cold coffee, and the stubborn fear that one more move would break my daughter's life in half. I stepped back from the doorway. "Come in for a minute," I said. Claire glanced toward Lily first, then toward me. "I only meant to drop this off." "I know." She entered just far enough to stand in the hallway light. She kept the food bag in both hands, not like a guest settling in, but like someone crossing a line carefully and leaving the door open behind her. That mattered. Lily took the fries to the kitchen, already singing to herself. The moment she was gone, Claire pulled a sealed envelope from her tote and placed it on the entry table beside Lily's permission slip. Corporate insignia. My stomach tightened before I opened it. "Elias filed the transfer notice," Claire said quietly. "Chicago property. 25-day relocation deadline. If you refuse, he'll move to terminate for non-compliance." The house seemed to shrink around me. Chicago meant packing Lily's bedroom again. New school, new neighborhood, new faces at breakfast drop-off. Another explanation I did not know how to make gentle. After her mother left, I had promised Lily one thing. Home would not keep changing shape. Elias knew that. He knew I was the general manager most likely to refuse a transfer. He also knew I had found discrepancies in the banquet linen invoices, and if I proved vendor fraud, the regional restructure he wanted would stall. So he was pressuring me from both sides. Move to Chicago and vanish from the flagship audit, or refuse and give him grounds to fire me. Claire's problem was different, but tied to mine. Elias wanted her to accept a VP role under his control. If she could not manage me, he would tell the executive board she lacked command over her own region. If she defended me without evidence, he would call it favoritism. If she abandoned me, he would own the region by morning. I looked at the envelope, then at the warm bag in her hand. "This is why you came? The lunch or the notice?" "Both." Claire's mouth tightened. "I came because you skipped food twice this week. Your audit notes show you were still logged into the vendor server after midnight, and Elias is trying to use your exhaustion as a weapon." She looked toward the kitchen, where Lily was now asking a stuffed rabbit if it wanted fries. "I also came because your daughter deserves a father who is not running on fumes." The simple truth of it made my grip tighten around the envelope. I can handle pressure. Then, I know. Claire set the food on the entry table. "That is the problem. You handle it so well that people keep adding more. Before I could answer, Lily returned with a fry in each hand. Are you staying for dinner? She asked Claire. Claire looked at me. I looked at the envelope again. No, Claire said gently. Not tonight. Your dad and I have work to fix first. Lily seemed to accept that. Children understood work when it kept adults from sitting down. Claire turned to leave, then paused at the door. Ethan, she said, her voice low enough that Lily would not hear, do not sign anything from Elias tonight. I wasn't planning to. Good. Tomorrow, we pull the vendor trail clean. She stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. The lunch bag stayed warm on the table. The transfer notice stayed cold under my hand. And Lily's question kept moving through the hallway long after Claire's car pulled away. Why do you keep bringing my dad food? Because someone had noticed the part of my life I thought I had hidden. The flagship hotel did not sleep. At 5:30 the next morning, the loading dock already smelled of wet concrete, diesel, and fresh bread from the bakery delivery. The kitchen team moved in sharp, practiced lines. Room service carts rolled toward the elevators. The lobby flowers arrived in tall buckets. Somewhere above us, guests were waking inside rooms polished so carefully they would never see the machinery that kept their stay effortless. I stood in my sub-basement office with Marcus Reed, my head of security, while 2 stacks of documents sat between us. Original linen purchase orders, altered vendor invoices, server access logs. The discrepancy was not a mistake. $4,000 had been moved through a billing code that only looked valid if no one compared the digital receipt against the physical purchase order. Marcus tapped the top page. Same user access window 3 nights in a row. Vendor side, external credential. But someone inside approved the change after hours. Camera? Marcus nodded. Loading dock office camera. Caught the vendor rep, leaving at 11:42. The billing change posted at 11:49. I looked up. Preserve that footage. Already pulled. Hash value printed. Copy sealed in my office. That was why Marcus was my confidant. He never needed a speech when a timestamp would do. Claire arrived 10 minutes later with a coffee carrier and a folder tucked under her arm. This time, she set the coffee beside the documents, not on top of them. You both look terrible, she said. Marcus took one coffee. Regional leadership has a gift for morale. Claire gave him a look. He smiled and left the office, closing the door behind him. Claire opened the folder. Elias flagged the linen audit as operational negligence. He sent a pre-brief to David and the board last night. David was the chief operating officer, Elias's boss. I read the memo. The language was polished enough to be dangerous. Recurring invoice irregularity under Ethan Scott's management, failure of vendor supervision, possible justification for leadership reassignment. Leadership reassignment. Corporate poetry for moving a single father out of the city before he could prove the invoices had been altered. I opened the server log. He's missing the chain of custody. Claire sat across from me. Then show me. For the next 3 hours. We matched every altered invoice to the original purchase order, and every after-hours adjustment to the same external vendor credential. Marcus sent the preserved camera stills. I printed the access log. Claire built the summary without changing a single technical phrase. That mattered too. She did not make the evidence prettier. She made it readable. At 2:17 p.m. My phone buzzed. Lily's school. I answered before the second ring. The school nurse said Lily had a fever and needed to be picked up. I looked at the clock. The audit packet was due to Claire at 4. Elias was waiting for failure. My hand closed around the phone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I hung up, Claire was already standing. Go. I can finish the summary in the car. You are not driving while reading server logs. I need Ethan. Her voice cut through the office, calm but firm. You need to pick up your daughter. I know how to read a server log. You have the evidence organized. I will compile it. Marcus will witness the footage packet. My first instinct was refusal. Refusal was easier than trust. Then I looked at the photo Lily had taped to the corner of my monitor. A crooked drawing of our house, me on the porch, her under a sun with too many rays. I handed Claire the folio. Do not let Elias reframe the vendor access as my approval. I won't. Marcus has the camera hash. I'll get it from him. I'll get it from him. The original purchase orders are tabbed in red. I can see that. I hate leaving this unfinished. I know. Claire picked up the folder with both hands. That is why I'm finishing it. I left before pride could cost Lily another hour in the nurse's office. By the time I reached the school, Lily was sitting on a cot with a blanket around her shoulders and a paper cup of water in both hands. Her cheeks were flushed. Her backpack sat beside her shoes. "Dad," she said, trying to sound brave and failing. I knelt in front of her. "Hey, Peanut, I didn't throw up. That is excellent management. I told Nurse Abby I could finish math, but she said, fever kids don't do fractions." Nurse Abby runs a strict operation. Lily leaned forward and rested her forehead against my shoulder. For one moment, the hotel vanished. Elias vanished. Chicago vanished. All that remained was the heat of my daughter's fever through my shirt and the small weight of her trust. I had almost chosen a deadline over this. That realization did not feel noble. It felt like a warning. At 4:06, while Lily slept on the couch under a dinosaur blanket, my phone buzzed. Claire. Packet submitted. Marcus witnessed. David requested full review. Elias is not pleased. A second message followed. Eat the soup in the bag before Lily wakes up and reports you. I looked toward the entry table. Another paper bag sat there. I did not remember bringing it inside. Claire must have left it when she dropped the school packet. I opened the container. Chicken soup. Still warm. For the first time that day, I sat down before eating. The fever broke by Saturday morning. Lily woke demanding pancakes, which was how I knew she had returned to full operational strength. I stood at the stove in sweatpants, flipping batter on a cast-iron griddle while she sat at the island arranging blueberries into a smiley face. The doorbell rang. I turned off the burner before opening the door. Claire stood on the porch in dark jeans and a gray sweater, holding a small bakery box and another folder. Lily spotted her from the kitchen. "Is that more food?" Claire lifted the box. "Croissants. You can come in." I gave Lily a look. She shrugged. "Hospitality, Dad." Claire stepped inside, smiling despite the tension around her eyes. She set the croissants on the island, then placed the folder beside my coffee. "Elias is fast-tracking the Chicago paperwork," she said. "The pancakes stopped smelling like comfort. He wants my signature by Tuesday." "Yes." "If I refuse?" "He moves for termination under mobility clause." Lily looked between us. I kept my voice even. "Peanut, take your plate to the dining room." "But, please," she went, reluctantly, with 2 pancakes and enough syrup to concern me. When she was out of earshot, I opened the folder. Chicago relocation, 25 days. Failing property. Temporary corporate housing in a school district I had never vetted. My jaw tightened. I'm not signing. I know. Lily finally has friends here. She likes her teacher. She knows which floorboard creaks in the hallway. I'm not making her pack her life into boxes because Elias wants to remove me from an audit. Claire wrapped her hands around the coffee mug I had placed near her. "If you don't sign, he'll terminate. He is building a record. He still needs the vendor contracts renewed by the end of the month. That helps, but not enough." "It does if Section 4 works the way I think it does." Claire's eyes sharpened. "What's Section 4? "The Master Service Agreement. If the audit lead is removed before chain of custody closes, mandatory fraud notice goes to the vendor, and the vendor can suspend service during dispute review. Elias thinks firing me silences the audit? It actually triggers a regional supply problem." Claire stared at me. "Are you sure?" "No, but I will be in 20 minutes. I went to the hall closet, pulled my briefcase from under Lily's winter coats, and took out the master service agreement. Claire cleared a space at the kitchen island while Lily watched us from the dining room with syrup on her chin. "Are you doing hotel homework?" Lily asked. "Very boring hotel homework," I said. "Does Miss Thomas need pancakes to think?" Claire looked at the untouched plate near the stove. "Yes," she said. "Apparently I do." Lily brought her one. That was how Saturday morning became a war room, with pancakes. By the time Claire finished the second cup of coffee, I had the clause. Section 4.2. Fraud Review Continuity. Mandatory vendor notice if audit custodian removed before evidence closure. Temporary service suspension rights during disputed findings. Elias had missed it, or thought I had. Claire read the clause twice, then looked at me across the island. "You can use this. I can use it to stay long enough to close the audit. And if he claims you are threatening the region, I secured a backup vendor yesterday." You did what? Local supplier. Smaller margin. Better quality control. Preliminary agreement is in my office. Claire stared at me for one long second. Then she laughed once under her breath. Not because it was funny, because the pressure had finally found a crack. Of course you did. What does that mean? It means you are impossible. Efficient. Impossible with spreadsheets. Lily raised her fork. That sounds like Dad. For the first time in weeks, the kitchen felt warmer than the stove could explain. The executive boardroom on the 20th floor smelled of lemon polish and expensive leather. Elias sat across from me in a charcoal suit, tapping a silver pen against his legal pad. Claire sat to his right, formal and unreadable, acting as regional mediator. David joined by video from corporate. I placed the master service agreement on the table. Elias began smoothly. Ethan, your refusal to accept the Chicago placement is a direct violation of executive mobility terms. The board expects flexibility from top-tier management. I did not argue philosophy. I slid one page across the table. Section 4.2 requires mandatory fraud. Notice if the audit custodian is removed before chain of custody closes. If you terminate me today, the linen vendor receives formal notice before close of business and can suspend service at all 6 regional properties during dispute review. Elias stopped tapping his pen. I added the second page. Marcus Reed preserved the loading dock footage. Claire compiled the server logs. The vendor credential altered the invoices after signed purchase orders. This is not operational negligence. It is external fraud with internal approval failure. David leaned closer on the video screen. Backup vendor? I placed the preliminary agreement beside the audit packet. Local supplier. Capacity enough for flagship and 2 overflow properties within 72 hours. Not ideal for full region, but enough to prevent guest-facing failure while legal closes the fraud review. Claire did not smile, but her pen stopped moving. Elias looked from the agreement to me. You went around corporate procurement. I prepared an emergency continuity option while preserving chain of custody. Marcus witnessed the packet. Legal can review the timestamp. David turned to Elias. Why was this relocation advanced before the audit closed? Elias's face changed by a fraction. Not much. Enough. The region requires decisive leadership, he said. And, apparently, food service, David replied. The relocation notice is paused. Ethan stays at flagship until audit closure. Elias, legal will review why this transfer was accelerated during an active vendor fraud review. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Elias left without looking at me. Claire remained seated until the door closed. I gathered the files. You leveraged the entire region's supply chain, she said. I protected it. You protected yourself too. Yes. The word felt strange in my mouth. I was used to protecting Lily, the hotel, the team, the guest experience, the crisis of the hour. Protecting myself always seemed selfish until someone else said it like a fact. Claire looked at the backup vendor agreement. You had that ready. I could not risk leaving you exposed. Her eyes lifted to mine. You still think my career is your responsibility? No. Ethan. I closed the binder. I think Elias is using me to get to you. If my defense creates risk for your region, I need to close that gap. Claire stood. Then let me close mine. 2 days later, Elias proved she would need to. He did not terminate me. He froze my department's operational budget instead. Every purchase over $50 required dual signature approval from corporate finance. Produce, cleaning supplies, banquet replacements, emergency maintenance parts, everything slowed. It was a siege tactic. Starve the hotel until my performance broke, then blame me for the cracks. The first failure hit the loading dock at 6:10 a.m. A produce truck idled in the cold while the driver refused to unload without payment authorization. The breakfast kitchen was 40 minutes from service. I called corporate finance twice and got voicemail. Marcus walked up beside me with a printed memo. Elias sent this to Claire. I read it under the loading dock light. Elias was offering Claire the VP role immediately if she signed off on a restructuring plan that demoted me to assistant manager, effectively forcing my resignation. If she refused, he would cite her inability to manage insubordinate regional leadership. I folded the memo sharply. He's using my resistance to test her loyalty. Marcus looked toward the idling truck. And the strawberries are about to become witnesses. I almost laughed. Almost. Then I took out my personal credit card and paid the release deposit myself. Marcus photographed the payment screen. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Preserving evidence before you pretend this is fine." The kitchen received the produce. Breakfast service started on time. I took the memo and went straight to Claire's office. Her door was open. She stood by the window, looking out over the city, posture rigid enough to hurt. I walked in and placed my hotel master keys on her glass desk. The metal clinked. "I saw the memo," I said. "I'll draft the resignation. You take the VP position. You can fix the region from the top if Elias stops blocking you." Claire turned. For the first time since I had known her, anger broke cleanly across her face. "Don't you dare manage my career, Ethan. I am not letting him use me to destroy your promotion." "He is not offering me a promotion. He is offering me a leash." She walked to the desk, picked up the keys, and slid them back across the glass, not into my hand. Across the desk. She waited until I picked them up myself. Then she tapped her phone and put the call on speaker. David answered after 2 rings. "Claire, I am declining the VP of Regional Operations position under Elias Vance," she said clearly. "I am also filing a formal grievance regarding budget freeze abuse, vendor audit interference, and retaliatory restructuring tied to Ethan Scott's refusal to accept the Chicago relocation." Silence filled the office. Claire continued. "Marcus Reed preserved the loading dock payment freeze and the produce authorization failure from this morning. I am sending his packet now. Ethan's operational continuity plan is sound. I am staking my current directorship on the fact that Elias is manufacturing failure." David's voice sharpened. "Send everything." "I already did." She ended the call. The office was quiet. My master keys felt heavy in my hand. "You could lose your directorship," I said. "I know. Because of me." "No." Claire's eyes held mine. "Because Elias thinks integrity is a weakness, and I am tired of proving him wrong privately." I had no answer. That was rare. Claire looked at the keys. "Go run your hotel." I did. The fallout did not arrive dramatically. It arrived through emails, calendar holds, access changes, and the sudden silence of people who realized the wrong executive might be in trouble. Elias was placed on administrative leave, pending internal review. The budget freeze lifted by Friday. The Chicago relocation was formally rescinded. Legal opened the vendor fraud case. Marcus gave 3 statements and enjoyed all of them more than he admitted. The hotel returned to chaos, but the air had changed. Pressure remained. The threat did not. For the first time in months, I closed my laptop at 5 on a Friday. 5. The number looked fake on the clock. I drove to the neighborhood park at the end of my street with a box of cupcakes on the passenger seat and a printed schedule on the dashboard. Lily's birthday party was already in motion when I arrived. 7 children ran across the grass in paper hats. The picnic table held juice boxes, napkins, and a lopsided cake Lily had chosen because it had too many pink flowers. Marcus stood near the parking lot in plain clothes, pretending he had only stopped by while also monitoring the entire park like a security assignment. "You're off duty," I told him. "I'm eating cake with situational awareness." "Of course." Lily ran to me and threw her arms around my waist. "You're not late." The words hit harder than she meant them to. I knelt and held out the schedule. "New rule," I said. "Weekends are yours." She took the paper like it was a contract. "Really? Really?" Marcus is taking primary duty rotation, and David approved the staffing matrix. Marcus lifted 2 fingers from across the picnic table. "Against my better judgment." Lily studied the schedule. "You wrote soccer here." I did, and pancakes. Operationally essential. She threw her arms around me again. This time, I let the moment last. A car pulled up near the curb. Claire stepped out carrying a wrapped gift and a small white bakery box. No company car, no blazer, no folder. Just Claire in a soft cardigan, crossing the grass while the late sun turned the park gold. She stopped at the edge of the picnic table. Lily ran to her immediately. "Miss Thomas, you came." "I was invited." "I invited you in crayon." It was very formal. Claire set the gift beside the cupcakes, then placed a folded memo on the table in front of me. I looked at it. She smiled slightly. "Not a crisis. That is exactly what people say before a crisis." "It is from David. Your employment review and hotel reporting line are no longer under my authority. The vendor audit is under legal. Elias is on leave. If I am here today, it is as Claire. I am here. The park noise seemed to lower around us, children laughing, paper plates rustling, a dog barking near the walking path. I picked up the memo and read it. Clean. No boss, no direct authority, no job pressure between us. Claire waited, letting me finish every line. That was her way of showing respect. Lily tugged on her sleeve. Do you want cake? I would love cake. Dad made the schedule so he can come to soccer. Claire looked at me. I see that. And pancakes. Very important. The schedule says he has to eat lunch too. Claire's eyes warmed. Smart schedule. Lily handed her a cupcake, then ran back to her friends. I stood beside Claire, the memo folded in my hand. You came with paperwork to a child's birthday party. You prefer clean lines. I do. So do I. I looked at Lily, laughing near the slide with frosting on her cheek, then at Marcus pretending not to supervise the balloon table, then at Claire holding a cupcake she had not eaten yet. What happens now? I asked. Claire looked toward the playground. Now your daughter has her birthday. You eat a cupcake. I stay if that is okay. As Claire? As Claire? And after? She reached into the bakery box and took out one small container. Soup. The same diner label from the first porch visit. I thought we could start with making sure you eat. The callback should have made me laugh. Instead, it made my throat tighten. Lily's question from the porch returned. Why do you keep bringing my dad food? This time, no one froze. I took the container. Thank you. Claire's smile was small and real. You're welcome. The sun dropped lower behind the trees, turning the chipped white park fence the same warm color as my porch. I thought of the peeling trim at home, the transfer notice on the entry table, the cold coffee in my hand, and Claire standing in the doorway with a lunch bag because she had seen the cost of all the things I refused to say. Rock bottom had not been dramatic. It had been a missed lunch, a fever call, a transfer envelope, a child asking the question adults were too careful to touch. And the way back up had not been dramatic either. It was soup on a porch, a server log finished by someone I trusted, a budget freeze documented before it could become my failure, a schedule with soccer and pancakes written in ink. Lily ran back to us with frosting on her cheek and a cupcake wrapper in her hand. Miss Thomas, she asked, are you coming to pancakes too? Claire looked at me first, not for permission as my boss, not as a regional director, as herself. I looked down at the schedule in Lily's hand. There was a blank space next Saturday morning. I took the pen from my pocket and wrote one word beside pancakes. Claire. Lily grinned. Claire read it and shook her head softly. You document everything? Only important things. She laughed, and the sound settled into the evening like something that belonged there. For the first time in a long time, home did not feel like something I was defending alone. It felt like something we were building carefully. One meal, one promise, and one ordinary Saturday at a time. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Real love shows up in the small things before it asks for anything big. Green flag. They help you protect your family without making you feel weak. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.